Here are 10 legit free agents still available and the teams that absolutely should sign them before someone else does. Joel Bitonio, longtime great guard of the Cleveland Browns, arguably one of the very best players still available. Maybe it's a one-year deal, doesn't last too much longer before he retires, but he can still play and he can really help a team. And there's several teams in need of interior offensive line help. I look at the Buffalo Bills in terms of a team that absolutely needs to do this, and I do think it's realistic that they maybe think about it here. They lose David Edwards, their stud left guard, and that's all they need left, right? They're trying to make this team better with the new staff, so you cannot ignore that position. You cannot rely on the late first-round pick to fill that need here, so Bitonio would really help them contend that much more. Another team I thought of, the Steelers, because they lost Isaac Sumalo. I could see that happening.
For a long time, NFL free agency followed a predictable rhythm. A few big names would move, teams would fill gaps, and fans would slowly adjust to the new season. But this year, everything broke. Within just days, the league saw a wave of signings, trades, and shocking roster decisions that completely reshaped the balance of power. Teams didn't just tweak their lineups, they rebuilt entire identities overnight. Franchises that were struggling last season suddenly look like playoff contenders. Meanwhile, some of the strongest teams from last year are now facing serious questions about whether they can even compete. And what makes this offseason different isn't just the number of moves, it's the aggression behind them.
But yeah, it's seriously something the Niners should think about here. Kirk Cousins is available, and I feel like this is a bigger free agent than people think. He's kind of gotten a bad rap his whole career while being very solid. Obviously, he gets that big contract from the Falcons, and it didn't work out, so I think he kind of gets bashed. The Falcons get bashed for it because of that. But if you remember, the first half of the season when Atlanta, after playing very well for Minnesota, the first half of the year with Atlanta, he looked fantastic. He had some monstrous games. There was times where it's like, is he even better all of a sudden on the Falcons? And then he gets a little banged up, multiple different injuries. He's trying to play through it. He's not playing that well. Comes out at the end of the year. He had multiple injuries. Remember, he was recovering from that Achilles as well. Throwing shoulder issues, so that kind of makes sense. So I guess there's that possibility that he's just not the same player after multiple injuries.
Teams are no longer waiting to develop talent slowly. They're going all in. Massive contracts are being handed out. Veterans are being replaced faster than ever. And front offices are clearly operating with a win now or fall behind mentality. It's created a domino effect across the league. One signing triggers another. One trade forces a rival team to respond, and suddenly the entire NFL feels like it's in a race where standing still is the fastest way to lose. Fans are calling this one of the most chaotic off-seasons in recent history, and they're not wrong, because this isn't just roster movement, this is a league-wide reset.
So we have pretty much seen most of the big free agents sign with their new teams or re-signing in general. So what I want to do is rank every NFL team's 2026 free agency period. So what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? And there are definitely still some good free agents out there like Kirk Cousins and Juwan Jennings. But honestly, if they were really good, they would have been signed already. So yes, some of these teams and rankings could change over the next few weeks. But it does feel like a lot of the big dominoes have already fallen, and most of the guys out there still like Tyreek Hill or Jerry Sneed, maybe they're past their prime a little bit. So I have 5 different tiers that we're going to drop them into. A+, mostly smart moves, risky spending, so you're spending money on good players. It could really go your way, maybe like the Patriots last offseason, or it can not go your way, maybe like the Raiders 2 years ago. Couldn't really do much, so that's not really a bad spot to be in. A lot of good teams are going to fall in that tier because they already have a good roster right now, and they probably have an expensive roster. And then we have the what are they doing tier, which is definitely yeah, not a big fan of this right now, what they have done throughout the offseason.
And if the first few days are any indication, the teams that made the boldest moves now might be the ones controlling the story when the season begins. If there's one thing that defines this year's free agency, it's this: the money is out of control. Contracts that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago are now becoming normal. Teams are handing out deals worth over $100 million without hesitation, not just to superstars, but to players who fit very specific system needs. This isn't just spending, this is strategic financial warfare. Front offices are using every inch of the salary cap, restructuring deals, pushing money into the future, and taking calculated risks to stack their rosters right now. And it's changing how teams are built.
So Logan Wilson, gone. Big fellas, this is just kind of a nothing burger, eh?
It didn't even move the needle. Hell, I didn't know he retired. So that's how much interest I had in him. So okay.
Yep. And that's kind of where we're at right now, because
Instead of slowly developing players over time, franchises are buying immediate impact. They're targeting players who can step in on day one and change outcomes, whether it's a defensive star who can anchor a unit or an offensive weapon who can transform a quarterback's performance. But there's a cost to this approach. These contracts come with pressure. If a player underperforms, the financial consequences can set a team back for years. Dead cap hits, limited flexibility, and forced roster cuts become real problems. So every big signing isn't just a move, it's a gamble, and some teams are betting everything.
first fun wave of free agency is kind of down. That first couple days, like when they first are able to talk to teams, there's this big rush and there's news coming out everywhere. This player signed here, this player signed there, this team traded for this. We're kind of past that, right? So we're kind of waiting for that next big splash in free agency. We're waiting for pro days. And yeah, this is just kind of the news cycle we're at right now.
What makes this even more intense is how quickly the market is inflating. One big contract resets expectations for the entire position. Suddenly, the next player demands more, and the cycle continues. This is how the NFL evolves financially, not gradually, but in bursts. And right now, we're watching one of those moments where the league's economics are being completely rewritten. There was a time when star players stayed with one team for most of their careers. That era is fading fast. This offseason has seen a wave of high-profile players switching teams, not at the end of their careers, but right in the middle of their prime. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, and defensive stars are all on the move, and it's creating a level of unpredictability the league hasn't seen in years. What's driving this shift? Part of it is financial. Teams are making tough decisions about who to pay and who to let go, but there's something deeper happening too. Players themselves are becoming more strategic. They're choosing situations where they can win, where they can maximize their value, and where they have the best chance to succeed immediately. Loyalty is no longer the main factor. Opportunity is. And that's why we're seeing players leave stable teams for new environments, sometimes even joining rivals or completely rebuilding franchises. For fans, this creates a strange dynamic. One day, a player is the face of your team. The next, they're wearing a different jersey. But for the league as a whole, it's making things more exciting.
It would be a pretty good replacement on a 1 year from Deshaun Wright. Joey Bosa, the top pass rusher available. He actually had a pretty solid, underrated season for the Buffalo Bills. Now, you kind of question if he's a fit in the new scheme the Bills are gearing towards in Buffalo. So maybe that's kind of ruled out, even though they're still looking for some more options. How about the 49ers? I mean, it's got to happen at some point. Why not right now? We thought it would happen last year. It didn't, but pair him with his brother, Nick Bosa. On top of that, the 49ers could use more pass rush help because Bryce Huff retired, a little surprising, and Michael Williams, their big-time draft pick in the first round last year, is coming off injury, and he's still growing as a pass rusher, really solid run defender. So why not add another option in there in Joey Bosa? It makes a lot of sense. I feel like he wouldn't come that expensive, especially it's got to be a pretty appealing spot for him with his brother there. So it makes all the sense in the world. Another one of those for both sides. I love those where both sides should make that move, should want to make that move. So I think we would all love if this happened. But there you have it, possibly the 10 best available options with good fits and teams that should pursue them. We'll see if any actually happen, not necessarily predictions, but I do think they are very, very realistic. So we have a bunch of recent free agency videos on the channel, including grades and for trades as well. And we have a recent mock draft, and we're going to start rolling into even more draft content here very, very soon as we're getting that much closer to the draft. So that'll do it for this one. Like, subscribe, to know when it's on. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Because no team can rely on past success anymore. Rosters are changing too quickly. Chemistry has to be rebuilt constantly, and every season starts to feel like a fresh story. This is the new NFL, where stars don't stay still and every offseason feels like a reshuffle of the entire league. What stands out most this offseason isn't just the moves themselves, it's how bold they are. Teams are no longer playing it safe. They're making decisions that could either turn them into contenders overnight or set them back for years. We're seeing franchises invest heavily in players coming off injuries. Others are committing huge money to players who have only had 1 or 2 breakout seasons. And some teams are completely reshaping their rosters around new systems without any guarantee it will work. This level of risk used to be rare. Now it's everywhere. And it reflects a deeper reality about today's NFL. The margin between winning and losing is incredibly small. A single player can change everything. One key signing can turn a mediocre team into a playoff threat. So teams are willing to take chances, because playing it safe often leads to being stuck in the middle, not bad enough to rebuild, but not good enough to win.
Baltimore. I mean, this is a team, because you look at who they ended up losing here in free agency, Tyler Linderbaum, but maybe they didn't want to give him $27 million. They lose likely. They do have Mark Andrews. They lose Draymond Jones, Charlie Kohler, who's a big part of like their blocking scheme. Keaton Mitchell, now that he's healthy again, hopefully he can kind of bounce back to what he was as a breakout player a couple years ago. Gilman and Washington are some losses. And then they also like traded away Odafe Owe last year at the deadline. They pick up Trey Hendrickson. We all know how that went down, and you can take like, I don't know, feelings out of it. Like, it's a smart move. Is it a little bit of a scummy move to back out of it because you're like, okay, we can keep our 2 first and we can get Hendrickson, who's maybe just as good as Max Crosby, if not better. Yeah, we're going to do that. So I get it. I would do the same if you didn't really care about the backlash. So that was a smart decision. John Simpson's a good pickup. I feel like he's been pretty underrated for the Jets over the last few years. And the Jets might feel the loss of Simpson and Vera Tucker. I mean, I think it's like risky. Is it risky? I don't really know. Like, for Baltimore, is it mostly smart moves? Because they did lose a lot. But, like, it was a smart move to back out of the Max Crosby trade.
And in today's league, that's the worst place to be. So instead, teams are choosing extremes, all-in moves, high-risk contracts, aggressive trades. They're betting on upside, even if it comes with uncertainty. And while not every move will work, the teams that get it right could completely change the landscape of the season. Because in this version of the NFL, fortune doesn't favor the cautious, it favors the bold. Even before a single snap of the new season, the NFL has already started to separate itself into 2 groups, not officially, not on standings, but in perception. Because every move in free agency sends a signal. And right now, some teams are sending a very clear message. We're here to compete. These are the teams that attacked free agency with purpose. They didn't just spend money, they spent it wisely. They filled gaps, strengthened weak positions, and added players who fit their system instead of just chasing big names. And you can feel the shift. Fans are excited. Analysts are buying in. These teams suddenly look faster, stronger, and more complete than they did just weeks ago. They're being labeled as off-season winners, and with that label comes something powerful: expectation. But on the other side, there are teams facing a very different reaction. Some lost key players and failed to replace them. Others made moves that feel confusing, expensive contracts that don't fully make sense, or signings that don't address their biggest problems. And then there are teams that barely moved at all, choosing patience in a moment where everyone else was being aggressive. And in this environment, silence can be just as loud as action. Because while one team hesitates, another one improves. That's how the gap starts to form. And the NFL doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. What makes this even more interesting is how quickly these narratives build. A team can win the offseason in a matter of days, or lose it just as fast. One smart signing can change everything. One bad contract can raise serious doubts. Of course, none of this guarantees what will happen on the field. We've seen off-season winners collapse before. We've seen overlooked teams rise out of nowhere. But perception matters more than people think. It builds pressure, it shapes expectations, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. Right now, some teams are being seen as contenders before the season even begins, and others, they're already being asked what went wrong. Long before the first kickoff, before the first highlight, before the first upset, the foundation of the NFL season is already being built. And this year, that foundation feels heavier than ever. Because what we're seeing in this offseason isn't routine, it's not minor adjustments or depth signings, it's transformation. Teams aren't just preparing for the season, they're trying to define it before it even starts.
I do like Washington's offseason. I think Washington had a good free agency period, adding to the interior, or excuse me, they lose these guys, but they were able to add Odafe Owe. It's a lot, not gonna lie, it's a lot. Chika Conquo, love the Leo Chanel pickup. Amik Robertson, love the Nick Cross pickup. Clavon Chason, like, the Patriots didn't want to match that. They bring in Rashad White for $2 million. Yeah, I'm cool with that. They bring back some running backs. I'm gonna say, mostly, I don't know, I might put them in A+. We're just looking at free agency in a vacuum, and there's always off-season winners, and then you kind of look back in a year from now and be like, I don't really know if I could say that that was a good off-season for them or a good free agency. But I think Washington kind of killed free agency, realizing they needed to get younger, more athletic, quicker, stronger, just faster in general, and they did. They still need to add another receiver, because Deebo Samuel's gone. They need another weapon, but they do get Chika Conquo for Jaden Daniels. But I like this a lot. Their defense was old and slow last year, and I think it's the opposite. I mean, I know what they're doing. Like, I know what the Cardinals are doing, and it's going to be kind of a tank year, and they were active in free agency, but like...
Every major signing, every trade, every contract is part of a larger strategy. Some teams are building around new identities, others are doubling down on what they already are, and a few are taking risks so big that they could completely change the direction of their franchise. This is where seasons are quietly decided, not in the spotlight, but in the decisions made when no games are being played. Because by the time the season begins, many of the outcomes are already in motion. A stronger offensive line means more time for a quarterback. A key defensive addition changes how teams attack. A single playmaker can turn close games into wins. These are not small details. They're the difference between making the playoffs and missing them. But what makes this offseason even more intense is how little room there is for error. The NFL today is too competitive, too fast, too unforgiving. If a team gets it right, the rewards are immediate. If they get it wrong, the consequences can last for years. That's why the urgency feels different now. Teams aren't just planning for the future, they're chasing the present. They're trying to win now, even if it means sacrificing flexibility later. And that creates a kind of pressure that shapes everything. Because once the season starts, there's no going back. The roster is set, the decisions are locked in, and the reality of those choices begins to unfold in real time. So when we look back at this season, we might talk about the big games, the standout performances, the defining moments. But underneath all of that will be this offseason, the moment where everything truly began.